Weird 911 call I took several years ago. Hello everyone. I was working the night shift as a 911 operator, disc switcher, about 5 to 6 years ago. It was about 11:30 p.m., and I received a 911 call from an identified landline number listing the line's origin under an address. I answered the phone. No one replied to my responses. I could hear what seemed like indistinct moaning and perhaps a jingle on a TV in the background of the call, like when it is playing some commercial or something. I thought, this is probably some elderly patient who's fallen or needs medical assistance. That was very, very common in the area, so I looked up the address. Nothing in the location history pops out as medical calls. There was a structure fire call a couple years prior. I didn't read the narrative on that call, because the house was still standing. Obviously, since someone was calling on a landline phone, I figured this must have been a small indoor fire that would have still been coded as a structure fire. At this point, the phone was quiet except for slight crackling, and none of them answered, so I just disconnected the line. I sent the call up to dispatch as an unverified emergency call since they had called in on a 911 line, and stated that I heard possible moaning but nothing else that stood out. My dispatcher had 2 police officers a couple blocks away that were clearing up a call, so he made them aware to check that unverified emergency call. A few minutes later, my telephone rang again from the same landline number. As before, I could hear the TV and the faint groaning in the background. My questions continued to be met with silence. Once more, after a bit, the line fell silent except for the delicate crackling. A couple of minutes after that, the police came rolling up on scene, and I waited to hear what the situation was. Then, a few minutes or so, they cleared the scene. The dispatcher sent me a message asking if the address was correct. I let her know the address had come through twice on a residential landline. So that had to be where the call was placed. My dispatcher then told me that the house had burned down a couple years ago. Apparently, all that was left was the concrete slab and some of the burned framing of the structure. The police officers knew the address but obviously went to the area to see if there was anybody injured or overdosed or anybody trespassing on the property, etc. They didn't find anybody in the region and none of the neighbors seemed to have heard or seen anything. I still think about this call from time to time. It was creepy when I took the initial call just because the moaning and the TV noises were odd. But knowing that the house was completely burned down and that there was no one living there or even a functioning phone line makes it creepier still.